A cold wind whispered a warning through the trees, a chilling sound that matched the thumping of my heart. The night was a dark blanket, but it was about to be torn apart. In the distance, I heard a low rumble, a sound that grew louder with every second. It was the sound of storm coming, and I knew it wasn't the kind you could hide from. The first thing I saw was the angry glare of headlights cutting through the darkness. They were like two blazing eyes looking for trouble. A moment later, a whole line of big SUVs pulled up my gravel driveway, one after another, until they blocked me in. My small, wooden cabin felt even smaller as I stepped onto the porch. My heart hammered against my ribs, a loud drumbeat of worry and anger. The main driver's side door opened, and a woman in a red blazer got out. Her high heels made a sharp, grinding sound as they sank into the gravel with every angry step. Her name was Veronica, and she looked like a hurricane ready to hit. "We warned you enough times, Alex," she shouted, holding a folder like it was a shield. "Tonight, you're out. The board has agreed to kick you out of this cabin. You've broken too many rules." I felt my hands grip the wooden porch railing so hard my knuckles turned white. It took me a second to understand what she had just said. Kick me out of my own home? The idea was so crazy it was almost funny. My voice shook a little, but it was strong. "You can't kick me out," I said, looking right at her. "I own this cabin. You have no right." Veronica smiled, but it was not a nice smile. It was cold and sharp. She held up the folder. "Oh, I have every right. You've ignored the rules. You didn't come to our meetings, and you didn't pay the silly fines we sent you. We've had enough. Pack your things, or we'll call the police." Behind her, the other board members stood like silent statues. They had their arms crossed and were nodding like they were all part of the same machine. One of them, a tall man named Mark, gave me a mean look. "You can leave quietly," he said, "or we can make this ugly." As they stood there, threatening me in the pale light of the moon, I felt a deep fire start to burn inside me. My heart was pounding, but a slow, quiet smile started to form on my face. If only they knew. If only they knew the one big secret that would make their whole world turn upside down. I took one step down from the porch, closer to them. The confident look on Veronica's face changed for just a second. "Are you sure?" I said slowly, my voice low. "You really want to do this?" She laughed, a loud, sharp sound that was full of pride. "Oh, we're way past asking nicely. You're finished here." What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this whole lake community existed because of me. The cabin I lived in was built by my grandfather. He had also bought the whole lake many years ago. The lake that every person in the neighborhood fished from, swam in during the summer, and used for their fancy HOA events. And it wasn't just the lake. The only parking lot for the community clubhouse and guest spaces, that was mine too. It was under a different name, a name they had never bothered to check. As Veronica came closer to give me the paper they called an eviction notice, I looked her straight in the eyes. I leaned in and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." Before she could say a word, a bright flashlight hit her in the face. A different car had just pulled up, and it had a police sign on the side. The HOA members stood up straighter, their confidence fading fast as the officer got out. His shoes made a loud, crunching sound on the gravel. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but strong. Veronica, still trying to act like she was in charge, turned and yelled, "Officer, this man is trespassing. We have an eviction order." She waved her folder in the air like it was a holy book. The officer looked at me with a raised eyebrow. "You live here, sir?" "Yes, officer," I said calmly, my smile getting bigger. "And not only do I live here, but—" I stopped myself. Not yet. The right time to show my hand hadn't come. I wanted them to worry first. The officer sighed and looked at the papers Veronica had given him. "This is an illegal eviction order. This is just a notice from your HOA. You can't kick someone out of their home with this." Veronica's face went pale, but she quickly put on a brave face. "We'll handle this. The HOA has its rules." "Maybe so," the officer said, "but the law is the law. This man isn't going anywhere tonight." The air felt heavy with the silence. The HOA members looked at each other, their perfect little plan falling to pieces right in front of them. They had no idea they were standing on land that I controlled under the light of the moon that was shining on the lake I owned. Veronica gritted her teeth and whispered, "This isn't over, Alex. You'll be sorry." I smiled even wider. "No, Veronica, you will be." The board members got back into their cars, their headlights disappearing into the dark night. The officer gave me a nod, told me to be safe, and drove away. As the quiet returned to the cabin, I looked at the shining lake and the empty parking lot in the distance. They had no idea what cards I was holding, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up to find a bright red paper nailed to my door. It said I had to follow new rules right away or face big problems. I laughed to myself. They were scared now, but this was only the start of their downfall. Later that day, I walked to the edge of the lake to clear my head. There, I met a new neighbor, a nice woman named Lisa. She had just moved in a week ago and told me how the HOA had already bothered her about the color of her fence. Her eyes looked tired, and her voice was full of worry. I told her, "Don't worry, Lisa. Things are about to change around here." That evening, as the sun went down over the lake, I heard the sound of engines again. This time, they were louder. This time, they sounded angrier. The HOA wasn't done. They were back, and they brought more than just threats. Big trucks rolled in. Workers jumped out with tools ready to tear something down. I froze. My heart started to race. What were they going to destroy? Then I saw them walking toward my dock. The old wooden dock my grandfather had built. Veronica stood proudly in front, yelling orders. "Rip it out. If he won't follow our rules, we'll take away his special things." I ran toward them, shouting, "Stop. You touch that dock, and you'll be sorry." But they didn't stop. Hammers were raised. The boards of the dock began to crack under the force of their tools. The first plank snapped and fell into the water with a splash. My blood boiled with anger and a new, strong feeling of wanting to fight back. They had no idea they were about to cross a line they could never come back from. And that's when I decided it was time to show them who really owned this place. The sound of the first piece of wood hitting the lake sounded like a gunshot. My heart jumped, not from fear, but from pure, hot anger. I ran as fast as I could toward the dock, yelling at the top of my lungs, "Stop! You have no right to touch that dock." But they didn't care. The HOA workers, wearing orange vests and mean smiles, kept hitting away. Every strike sent small pieces of wood flying into the air and memories rushing through my mind. This wasn't just any dock. This was the dock my grandfather built with his own 2 hands. It was where I learned how to fish. It was where my parents taught me to swim. It was where my late wife and I had our first kiss. That dock was a part of my soul. Veronica stood there with her arms crossed, watching me like a hungry hawk. "You've been warned, Alex. Rules are rules. You can't just do whatever you want because you think you're special." I stopped a few feet away, tried to catch my breath. "You're destroying private property," I yelled. Mark, the tall board member, stepped forward with a mean smile. "HOA property, buddy, and we can take it down if we want. You didn't pay your fines. Think of this as your punishment." My blood felt like it was on fire. They really believed they owned everything. They really believed they had power over me. They didn't know that the very ground they stood on wasn't theirs. I made my hands into fists. "You're making a mistake. A huge mistake." Veronica laughed, throwing her blonde hair back. "Oh, really? And what are you going to do? Call the cops again? The sheriff already told us to handle it ourselves. You have no one to protect you here." I wanted to yell back, to tell them about the papers, the ownership, the real power I had. But no, not yet. The right time was everything. If I showed them my hand now, they would twist the story, fight it, maybe even hide their bad actions. I needed them to keep making bigger mistakes. As the workers ripped another piece of wood out, I took out my phone and started recording. "Keep going," I said calmly, holding the camera steady. "This is going to cost you more than you can ever imagine." Veronica looked at me with a hateful glare. "Delete that video, or You'll what?" I cut her off. My voice was low but dangerous. "Call the HOA police? Keep going. You're going to wish you had never touched a single nail." For a second, even her workers hesitated, looking unsure. But she yelled at them to keep going, and they did what she said. The dock was now half gone, pieces of it floating in the water like broken memories. By the time they finished, it was dark. The workers left looking guilty, while Veronica and Mark gave me one last threatening look. "This is only the beginning," Veronica said coldly. "Pack your things. You'll be gone soon." I stood silently, looking at what was left of the dock as the lake reflected the moonlight. My jaw was tight. My anger was no longer just anger. It was a strong will to win. They thought they could bully me out. They thought I was weak. They thought they had the power. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I drove into town to meet with someone who could help me start my plan. My old friend David, a lawyer who had grown up here just like me. We met at a small restaurant by the lake. The air smelled of bacon and coffee. "Alex," David said, shaking my hand. "You said it was important." I nodded and slid a folder across the table. Inside were the original papers my grandfather had signed many years ago. Proof that I owned not just the cabin, but the entire lake, and even more importantly, the only parking lot the HOA used for their events. David's eyes got wide as he looked through the papers. You've been sitting on this all this time. I didn't need to use it, I said quietly. Until now. He smiled, shaking his head. Alex, you have them. They can't hold HOA meetings. They can't have their fishing tournaments. They can't even let guests park without your permission. This is amazing. I don't want to get back at them, I said, my voice steady. I just want them to stop bullying people. They think they're gods, but they're not. It's time to remind them of that. David laughed a little. You're going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. That afternoon, as I drove back to the cabin, I saw Lisa, the new neighbor, struggling with bags of groceries while her two kids tried to help. I stopped and helped her carry them to her porch. She smiled and said thanks. The HOA fined me yesterday because my trash cans were visible from the street, she said. They're making my life terrible. I smiled back. Don't worry, Lisa. Things are going to change very soon. She looked at me, unsure, but didn't ask more questions. That night, as I stood by the lake, I felt a strange calm. The water was still, as if it was waiting for what was to come. I thought about my grandfather, about the things he left me, and I knew I had to protect it. Not just for me, but for everyone who had been bullied by people like Veronica. But my moment of peace didn't last long. Around midnight, I heard the loud sound of engines again. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch, my heart beating fast. The HOA was back, but this time they weren't here to talk or to tear something down. They were here with a tow truck. The truck backed up toward the parking lot entrance, and I could see them putting chains on the entrance gate. Veronica's voice was loud in the night air. If we can't control him, we'll block him in. He's not going anywhere. My jaw tightened. They were crossing the line again. I ran down the steps, shouting, "What do you think you're doing?" Veronica turned, her eyes burning with pride. "You're finished here, Alex. You want to play games? Fine. We'll make sure you regret it." The truck's engine got louder as the chains pulled hard on the gate. Sparks flew. Metal groaned, and then bang. The gate fell to the ground under the force, making a loud sound. They were trapping me in like a prisoner. I felt my anger boil over. My hands were in fists, and my voice was a roar in the night. "That's it. You've crossed the line for the last time." They froze for a second, surprised by how angry I was. Veronica smiled, clearly not understanding what was about to happen. Because at that very moment, I decided it was time to tell them the truth. And the next thing I was about to do would shake their whole HOA to its very core. The night air felt heavy, as if it was holding its breath. The HOA members stood by the broken gate with proud smiles, while the tow truck's engine hummed loudly. Its headlights shined brightly into my yard. I could see Veronica's shape in front of the lights, with her hands on her hips like a queen. Behind her, Mark was leaning on the truck with a sly smile, clearly enjoying this. "You really thought you could win against us, Alex?" Veronica shouted over the noise. "You'll leave this property one way or another. You're just one man. We're a whole group." I stepped forward, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The light landed right on her face. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life," I said, my voice shaking. Not from fear, but from the hot anger that filled me. Veronica tilted her head and gave a fake, laughing sound. "What are you going to do? Call the cops again? Go ahead. They won't save you this time." The truck's engine got louder, and the driver began to move to block the only way out. Sparks flew as the gate was dragged across the gravel. They thought they had me trapped. They thought I had no power. I took out my phone and started recording again. "Go ahead," I said calmly. "Show the world what you're doing." Mark gave a loud scoff. "What good is that video going to do? Nobody cares." But they were wrong. That video was going to be my weapon. As they finished blocking the gate, Veronica turned back to her car. "Let's go, boys. Let him rot here. Maybe he'll finally learn to follow the rules." My jaw tightened. I wanted to yell the truth right then. I wanted to tell them that they were standing on land I owned, on a road I controlled, and that the parking lot they used every single day was mine. But no, it still wasn't time. Instead, I smiled. A slow, serious smile that made Veronica stop walking. "You'll be sorry for this," I said softly, but loud enough for them to hear. She laughed again and got into her SUV. The trucks drove away, leaving the broken gate lying there like a dead thing. The gravel crunched under their tires as they disappeared into the night. Once they were gone, I stood in the quiet. My breath was heavy. I looked at the lake shining under the moonlight. My grandfather's words came back to me. Words he had said when he first gave me the keys to the cabin years ago. "Alex, this land isn't just yours. It's your duty. Protect it. Protect what is right." I nodded to myself. "I will, Grandpa. I will." The next morning, I didn't waste any time. I called David, my lawyer friend, and told him everything that had happened. By the time the sun was high, he was standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee and looking through the papers I gave him. They've done things that are against the law, Alex, David said, his voice firm. Destroying your dock, blocking your gate. Those are crimes. You have more than enough to stop them. And when you add that to these papers, he tapped the documents, you have them trapped. I leaned back in my chair, thinking, I don't just want to sue them. I want them to understand. I want them to learn something from this. They've been bullying everyone here. Lisa told me they fined her for leaving her trash cans out too long. I've seen them bother other neighbors. It has to stop. David nodded. Then we'll do this smartly. First, I'll file an order with the court to keep them off your property. That will give you time. In the meantime, you keep recording everything they do. Every threat, every move. We'll build a case so strong they won't even know where to begin. Later that day, Lisa came by to say thanks for helping her with groceries. She looked nervous. Alex, I heard Veronica talking to someone this morning. She's planning something big. She said she's going to make an example of you. I smiled a little. Let her try. That evening, as the sun went down behind the trees, I sat on my porch with a notebook, writing down every incident, every threat. The lake was calm, the kind of calm that comes before a big storm. Then, just as darkness arrived, headlights appeared at the end of my driveway again. My stomach sank. It wasn't over. Not even close. The cars pulled up, this time with more people, at least a dozen HOA members. They walked toward my cabin with flashlights and papers, shouting orders to each other. Veronica was at the front, her face full of anger. We're doing an emergency inspection, she yelled. You've broken many rules, and we're writing everything down to have you removed forever. I stepped down from the porch, standing tall. You're trespassing, I said firmly. Mark smiled. This whole area is HOA property, buddy. We have every right to be here. I slowly took the paper out of my pocket and held it up. Are you sure about that? I asked. Veronica stopped for a second, her eyes getting narrow. What's that supposed to mean? I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I put the paper back into my pocket. Leave my property now. But they didn't. They spread out, taking pictures, writing notes, and talking to each other about made-up violations. One of them kicked over a flower pot. Another walked all over my garden, taking pictures. I felt the anger rising inside me again, hotter than before. I took out my phone and started recording. Keep going, I said, my voice steady. Every second of this is being written down. Veronica marched up to me, her face inches from mine. You think this is a game? You think you can scare us with your little videos? You're finished here, Alex. Do you hear me? Finished. I looked her right in the eyes. No, Veronica, you are. She stepped back, looking at me with hatred, and then turned to the others. Take everything you can. We're shutting him down for good. The tension was thick. My heart beat fast as they continued their so-called inspection. The night grew darker, the air colder. I stood there, silent but full of anger, recording everything. And then it happened. One of the workers, while walking around the edge of my property, slipped near the lake. He fell into the water with a loud splash, screaming for help. Chaos broke out. The HOA members ran to pull him out, their flashlights bouncing wildly over the water. Veronica screamed, "Get him out! Hurry!" As they pulled the soaking man onto the shore, coughing and shaking, I couldn't help but speak. Be careful, I said. That lake isn't yours to mess with. Veronica turned around, her eyes blazing. What did you just say? I stepped forward slowly, my voice low but sharp. You heard me. That lake, you have no claim to it. None. She looked shocked, her mouth open, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw a crack in her confidence. And that's when I decided it was time to hit them where it hurt the most. The next move I was about to make would shake their whole HOA to its core, and there would be no coming back from it. The lake shimmered under the pale moonlight, almost as if it was making fun of the chaos on its shore. The HOA members were huddled together, their flashlights dancing across the wet ground as they tried to help the man who had fallen in. He was shaking, his clothes clinging to his body, and the cold night air made him cough a lot. Veronica was kneeling beside him, her voice full of fake care. You'll be fine. Just take a deep breath. But her eyes looked at me with pure hate. I stood a few feet away, my arms crossed, recording every second. My voice was calm, almost too calm. You really should have stayed off my property, Veronica. The lake doesn't like people who don't belong here. She stood up quickly, pointing a shaking finger at me. You think you're smart, don't you? This isn't over, Alex. I'll call an emergency meeting tomorrow, and we'll vote to get you removed for good. The other members nodded nervously, still scared from the accident. I stepped closer, my voice steady, but with a hint of danger. Go ahead and have your meeting. Just make sure you do it somewhere else, because soon you won't have anywhere to park. Her mouth dropped open a little, and for a split second, I saw confusion in her eyes. She didn't understand. Not yet, but she would. They packed up quickly, whispering to each other as they left. Mark gave me a long look before getting into his car and slamming the door hard. The line of cars drove off into the night, their headlights becoming tiny dots until they were gone. The quiet after they left was so loud. I turned back to the lake, its surface calm again as if nothing had happened. I whispered to myself, "This is your fight too, Grandpa. Let's finish it." The next morning, I woke up early and called David. "It's time," I said simply. He knew what I meant. We met at the courthouse later that morning, where David filed an emergency legal order against the HOA for coming onto my land, bothering me, and destroying my property. He also started the process of making my full ownership of the lake and the only parking lot they used official. "This will take some time," David warned. "But once this goes through, they won't know what hit them." In the neighborhood, things were getting heated. The HOA sent out many emails claiming I was a threat to the community and telling people to stay away from me. They made me look like a bad guy, a dangerous old man who didn't want to follow the rules. But the people weren't all on their side. Lisa stopped by that afternoon, her voice shaking. "Alex, they're spreading lies about you." But I told my neighbors the truth about what happened. A few of them are starting to question Veronica's leadership. I smiled softly. Good. The truth always comes out. That evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I noticed cars slowly driving by, the people inside looking at my cabin. Whispers were spreading. The HOA's hold on the community was starting to break, but Veronica wasn't giving up. Not yet. Around midnight, the roar of engines broke the quiet again. This time, it wasn't just a few cars. It was a whole line of them. Trucks, SUVs, and even a small bulldozer rolled up to my gate. My heart pounded as I grabbed my flashlight and phone, stepping out to face them. Veronica climbed out of her SUV, with Mark and several other board members standing beside her. The bulldozer's engine rumbled behind them like a beast ready to attack. "What is this?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the night. Veronica smiled, her face full of victory. "If you won't leave by yourself, we'll get rid of the problem ourselves. That cabin of yours is coming down tonight." For a moment, I froze. I couldn't believe she had gone this far. The bulldozer roared louder, its headlights cutting through the darkness. The driver revved the engine, ready to move. My hand tightened on my phone as I hit record. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," I said, my voice low and sharp. Veronica laughed coldly. "No, Alex, you made the mistake when you went against us." The bulldozer began to move forward, its metal blade shining under the moonlight. The ground shook as it came closer to my cabin. My chest felt tight, but I stood my ground. I raised my voice so they could all hear. "Touch this cabin, and you'll be more sorry than you've ever been." Veronica gave a mean smile. "We'll see about that." The bulldozer moved closer, the driver's face hidden behind the bright lights. My porch light flickered as if it was trying to warn me. My heart beat fast. Then crash. The bulldozer's blade hit my fence, breaking it into pieces. The sound was like thunder in the night. The workers cheered, and Veronica clapped her hands slowly, smiling with victory. But she didn't know. She didn't know that every second of this was being recorded. She didn't know that the very land she stood on wasn't hers to claim. And she definitely didn't know what I was about to do next. Because right then, with the bulldozer only a few feet from my cabin, I took out my phone and made a single call that would change everything. The line clicked and a voice answered. "Sheriff's Department. What's your emergency?" I spoke calmly, my eyes locked on Veronica. "Yes, this is Alex. The HOA is illegally tearing down my home right now. I have proof. Send everyone you've got." Veronica's smile faded a little, but she kept her head up. "Call whoever you want. They can't stop us now." The bulldozer roared again, louder, closer, and unstoppable. And just as it was about to hit my cabin, red and blue lights flashed in the distance, getting brighter by the second. Sirens wailed, cutting through the night. Veronica froze. Mark cursed under his breath. The workers were scared, and they stepped back. The bulldozer stopped with a loud screech. The sheriff's cars surrounded the property. Officers jumped out with flashlights and guns. "Step away from the machine. Hands where we can see them." Veronica stammered. "This is HOA business. You have no right to—" The sheriff cut her off. "This is an HOA business. This is a crime against private property. You're all under investigation." Veronica's face went pale. I stepped forward, holding up my phone with the video playing. I have everything recorded. Every single thing they did. The sheriff nodded at me. You'll need to come to the station to give a full statement. These people are in a lot of trouble. The HOA members were silent. The workers slowly backed away from the bulldozer, their hands raised. Veronica's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The officers began to talk to them, and the HOA members were told to leave. Veronica gave me one last hateful look before she was led away, her pride gone. As the sirens faded and the night became quiet again, I looked at the broken fence and the cabin standing behind it. My home was safe for now, but this wasn't the end. Veronica would come back angrier than ever, and the HOA would try something even bigger. They didn't know they were fighting a battle they could never win, because the next move was mine. And when I made it, they'd lose everything. The night after the sheriff left, I barely slept. Every sound the cabin made, every whisper of the wind through the trees made me sit up, expecting the HOA to come back. They had gone too far now, tearing down my dock, blocking my gate, and almost destroying my home. But they also showed me how desperate they were. That desperation would be their end. By the time the sun came up, I was sitting on my porch with a hot cup of coffee, looking at the lake. The mist floated over the water like a ghost, and I thought of my grandfather again. His voice was in my mind. Never let bullies take what's yours, Alex. Stand your ground, but do it smartly. I already had my next move planned. At 9 o'clock sharp, David arrived carrying a thick folder. You're not going to believe this, he said as he walked to my steps. I just got the HOA's money records. Guess what? They've been using your parking lot lease as a promise for their community loans. They've been counting on that land for years, and you own it completely. I felt a smile spread across my face. That's it, David. That's how we hit them. He nodded. I'll send them a formal paper today telling them they can't use it anymore. By law, you can put a fence around it. And without that parking lot, they can't have meetings, can't have events, can't even let visitors park. They're done. But I wasn't stopping there. We're going to do it in a way they'll never forget, I said. Not just a fence. I'm going to put up a big sign so everyone sees it. David gave a little smirk. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? That afternoon, I went into town and hired a local construction crew. They were more than happy to help once they heard the story of what the HOA had done. We'll have it fenced by tomorrow morning, the foreman promised. In the meantime, Lisa and a few other neighbors came by to check on me. Alex, we heard what happened last night, she said, her voice full of worry. Are you okay? I'm fine, I told her. But things are about to get very interesting. Her kids played by the porch steps, laughing, not knowing about the fight between the HOA and me. Lisa looked worried. Veronica is furious. She told everyone at the clubhouse that you're a danger to the neighborhood. She's planning something big. I laughed a little. Let her plan. By the time she tries anything, she'll be standing on land she no longer controls. That evening, I walked around the edge of the parking lot I owned. It was quiet, empty, except for a few leaves blowing across the ground. This lot had been their life for years. They held their community barbecues here, parked here during their fancy meetings, and even rented it out for events. They didn't realize that the ground beneath their feet belonged to me, that as the sun went down, the construction crew arrived with fencing materials. I watched as they marked the property lines and began digging holes for the posts. The sound of drills and hammers filled the air as the first parts of the fence went up. By midnight, the whole lot was closed off, and a huge sign stood at the entrance. Private property. No, HOA access. Anyone who comes here will be punished. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. This was just the beginning. The next morning, chaos erupted. Veronica showed up with a line of HOA members, all dressed in their matching shirts. She slammed on her car brakes when she saw the fence, her face turning red with anger. Mark got out behind her, his mouth wide open. What is this? Veronica screamed, walking up to the fence. She shook it like an animal in a cage. Who gave you the right to block our lot? I stepped out from behind my truck, holding a copy of the deed. I did, I said calmly. Because this lot is mine. It always has been. Mark laughed nervously. No, this must be illegal. You can't just do this. Oh, it's legal, I replied, handing them a copy of the paper David had made. You've been using this land without permission for years. Now, this is your official notice to get off my property. Veronica grabbed the paper, reading it fast, her face twisting with every word. This isn't over, Alex. We'll take you to court. We'll destroy you. I leaned against my truck, my arms crossed. Go ahead. But until then, you're not setting foot on this lot. Not without my permission. The HOA members began shouting. some even saying they would break the fence. I took out my phone and started recording again. "Try it," I said calmly. "The sheriff's number is on speed dial." Veronica's face was full of fury. "You think you've won? You think this is enough to stop us? We'll find another way." I smiled. "No, Veronica. This is just the start." The HOA left in a hurry, their cars kicking up dust as they sped off. I stood there watching them disappear, knowing the war had just become much bigger. But later that night, as I sat on the porch enjoying the quiet, I heard something that made my stomach drop. The sound of engines, not just one this time. Many. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped into the yard. Headlights filled the trees, and the sound grew louder. Trucks, SUVs. The HOA was back, this time with more people, more tools, and more anger than ever. And leading the charge was Veronica, standing in the back of a pickup truck holding a loudspeaker. "You think you can stop us, Alex?" Her voice was huge in the night. "We're taking everything back tonight." My heart pounded. This was it. They were giving it their all. I made my hands into fists, ready to face them, because the next few minutes were going to change everything. The roar of engines shook the quiet night, making the windows of my cabin rattle. Flashlights cut through the darkness, moving across the yard like searchlights. My heart raced, but my mind was clear. This was the night everything would come to a head. Veronica stood high in the back of the truck, her hair blowing wildly in the wind as she yelled orders through the loudspeaker. "Tear it all down. The fence, the signs, everything. This is our community." The crowd of HOA members cheered, waving tools, crowbars, and even a few sledgehammers. Their faces were twisted with anger and wanting to win, like a mob ready to burn something to the ground. I stepped forward from my porch, my flashlight beam hitting Veronica right in the face. "Stop right there," I yelled, my voice echoing across the lake. "This is private property, and you're trespassing. Turn back now while you still can." Veronica smiled down at me from the truck bed, her voice full of hate through the loudspeaker. "You can't hide behind a piece of paper, Alex. We're taking back what's ours. You think you're smart, but tonight you're finished." I held my phone tight in one hand, already recording every second. "Go ahead, Veronica. Make your move. Every single one of you is about to be sorry for this." Mark jumped out of his SUV with a crowbar, pointing it toward the fence. "Let's go, guys. Tear it down." The mob rushed forward, tools in hand, hitting the fence. The metal groaned under the pressure, but it held strong. Sparks flew as they hammered at the locks, yelling curses into the night. I raised my voice again. "Last warning. You touch that fence, and you're all going to jail." Veronica laughed through the loudspeaker. "You think the sheriff is going to come running for you again? We have more people than you, old man. You're just one person against all of us." But she was wrong, because as soon as the first part of the fence broke under their hits, red and blue lights exploded from the tree line, cutting through the darkness like a storm. Sirens wailed louder and closer than ever before. The HOA members froze, their tools falling to the ground with loud clatters. Veronica's smile faded, and her grip on the loudspeaker slipped. From the trees, several sheriff's cars came out, blocking the HOA's escape. Officers jumped out with flashlights and guns. "Step away from the property. Hands where we can see them." The crowd of HOA members were scared, stumbling back from a fence. Veronica stammered into the loudspeaker. This is HOA business. You have no right to get involved." The sheriff himself stepped forward, his voice loud and clear. "This is an HOA business. This is a crime against private property, destroying property, and planning a crime. Drop the tools now." One by one, the members let their tools fall, their hands raised. The officers moved quickly, holding a few of them, including Mark, who shouted, "This isn't over. You can't do this to us." Veronica tried to get away toward her SUV, but two officers stopped her, blocking her path. "Ma'am, you're under arrest," one of them said, putting handcuffs on her hands behind her back. She screamed and kicked, but they dragged her toward the police car. As they put her into the car, I stepped closer. Veronica looked at me with pure hate. "You think you've won, Alex? You think this is the end?" I leaned down a little, meeting her eyes. "No, Veronica. This is just the beginning of your end." The sheriff came to me, nodding. "We have enough here to charge the board members. You did the right thing by calling us." I nodded back. "Thanks, Sheriff. They've been making this community's life miserable for too long." The officers spent the next hour getting information, collecting tools as proof, and putting the arrested members into the police cars. By the time they drove away, the night was quiet again. The only sound was the gentle waves of the lake hitting the shore. Lisa came running up from her house, out of breath. "Alex, I saw everything. I can't believe you stood up to them like that. You saved us." I smiled a little. "It's not over yet, Lisa. They still have their lawyers, and they'll try to fight this in court. But we have the truth on our side, and soon the whole community will see who they really are." The next morning, I met with David to talk about the next steps. "They're going to try to sue you," he warned. "But with everything we've recorded, they don't have a chance. And once we officially file the deed with the court, their whole HOA structure falls apart." I nodded. "Then let's do it. I want this over once and for all." That afternoon, we put official notices around the lake and the parking lot. Private property, no trespassing. Owner Alex. The people came out to read the signs, whispering to each other. Some looked relieved, others were shocked. Lisa stood next to me, smiling. "They're starting to realize the truth, Alex. They know you're not the bad guy." But not everyone was convinced. Mark had been released on bail, and he stood at the edge of the lot, looking at me with hatred. "You think you've won, Alex? We're coming back. You can't stop us." I looked at him with a steady stare. "Try me." That night, the air was calm again. The lake shone under the stars, and for the first time in weeks, I felt peace. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the final part of the story. The HOA wasn't going to go quietly. And sure enough, just past midnight, a sound broke the silence. Not engines this time. Explosions. I sat up from my bed, my heart pounding as the sky lit up with flames. I ran outside to see the parking lot on fire. The fire was licking the fences. The sign I had put up was burning. Someone had set it on fire. As the smoke rose into the night sky, I knew the HOA had just crossed the final line. And in the ashes of their desperate act, I was going to end this war once and for all. The flames reached high into the night sky, painting everything in shades of orange and black. The smell of burning wood and melted plastic filled my lungs, and I coughed as I rushed to grab the garden hose. The fence around the parking lot was already half gone. The sign had fallen into glowing pieces. My heart pounded as I sprayed water on the fire, but it was no use. This was no normal fire. Someone had used a special liquid to make it burn faster. By the time the fire department arrived, the lot was black and smoking. They worked quickly to put out the rest of the fire, but the damage was done. The once strong fence was nothing but twisted metal and ash. I stood there with my hands on my knees, sweat dripping down my face, watching the destruction. The fire chief came to me. "This was not an accident, Alex. Someone did this on purpose." "I know who did it," I said, my voice low but steady. "And they're going to pay." The sheriff arrived shortly after, looking at the scene. "We'll start a fire investigation. Do you have security footage?" I pointed to the small cameras I'd put up the day after the last attack. "Everything's recorded." Later, inside the cabin, I watched the video on my laptop with the sheriff and David by my side. The video showed exactly what I expected. Mark and two other HOA members sneaking onto the lot with gas cans. They poured the liquid along the fence, lit it, and ran. David leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "That's it, Alex. That's the end for them." The sheriff nodded. "With this proof, we're charging them with setting a fire, coming onto your land, and destroying property. This is going straight to the district attorney." I felt a wave of relief mixed with anger. They had gone too far again. But now they would finally face the consequences. The next morning, the arrests made headlines in the local newspaper. HOA board members arrested for arson, screamed the front page. People gathered around my cabin, some apologizing, others thanking me for standing up to the board. Lisa hugged me, with tears in her eyes. "You did it, Alex. You showed everyone the truth." But even as the community turned against the HOA, Veronica remained quiet. Too quiet. She hadn't been seen since her first arrest. No calls, no threats, no proud appearances. That silence worried me more than her shouting ever had. A week passed, and while repairs began on the parking lot fence, I got ready for the upcoming court hearing. David worked hard, building a perfect case to finally get rid of the HOA's control. "Once this hearing is over, they won't have a legal leg to stand on," he said confidently. The day of the court hearing, the small-town courthouse was full of reporters and curious people. Inside, I sat at the table with David, my hands clasped together. Across the room sat Veronica, looking neat but pale, her eyes cold as ice. Next to her was an expensive lawyer who looked at me with the same hate. The hearing began, and David showed every piece of proof. The videos of them trespassing, the destruction of my dock, the bulldozer attempt, the video of the fire. The judge watched each clip with a serious look. Veronica's lawyer tried to say that I was a crazy person who started the fight with the HOA, but it was useless. The proof was too strong. Finally, the judge looked right at Veronica. You and your board have not only used your power wrongly, but you have also done many crimes. This court takes away the HOA's power right away. Also, you are ordered to pay damages to Mr. Alex for the destruction of his property. The judge's hammer hit the table, and it was over. The HOA was gone. The room was filled with whispers. Lisa, sitting in the back, gave me a thumbs up. Veronica sat frozen, her face losing all color. Slowly, she stood up, looking at me with pure hate. "This isn't the end, Alex," she whispered. "You may have won here, but you'll be sorry for going against me." I looked back, calm and steady. "You've already lost, Veronica. You just don't know it yet." Outside the courthouse, people gathered around me, clapping and cheering. "Thank you, Alex," someone shouted. "You saved our community." I smiled a little, shaking hands and thanking everyone. For the first time in months, I felt like the bad dream was finally over. But that night, as I came back to my cabin, I noticed something strange. The lights inside were on. I knew I had turned them off when I left. My heart beat fast. I crept toward the door, my phone ready to call the sheriff. The door was a little open. I pushed it open slowly. The hinges made a small noise. Inside, everything looked normal except for one thing. On my kitchen table sat a single envelope. No name, no address, just an envelope. With shaking hands, I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with words written in red ink. "You may have won the battle, but the war isn't over. Watch your back." The cabin felt colder all of a sudden, and I knew this wasn't the end. Veronica wasn't done. I tightened my grip on the note. My jaw was set because neither was I. The next move was going to be mine, and when I made it, there would be no coming back for Veronica or anyone who stood with her. The note in my hand shook slightly as the words burned into my mind. "Watch your back." The cabin was silent, but the tension in the air felt alive, as if the walls were warning me. I set the note down carefully on the table, every feeling I had telling me that Veronica was behind this. The HOA might have been gone legally, but she wasn't someone who gave up easily. I checked the locks on every door and window twice before finally sitting down with a cup of coffee that had gotten cold in my hands. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the porch with my flashlight, looking into the tree line, waiting for something or someone to move. At sunrise, I called David. "She's planning something," I told him. David sighed. "Alex, she's out on bail. There's only so much she can do before she ends up back in jail. Stay calm. We'll get an order from the court to keep her away first thing." But I wasn't calm. Veronica wasn't the type to just make empty threats. I knew she had one last plan, and I wasn't going to wait for it to hit me first. That morning, I drove into town and met with the sheriff. "She broke into my house," I said, showing him the note. "This isn't over." The sheriff looked at the paper, his face getting serious. "We'll keep patrols around your property, Alex, but be careful. She's desperate now, and desperate people are dangerous." As I drove back, I noticed a black SUV following me for a few miles. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, every nerve on edge. When I turned onto the dirt road leading to my cabin, the SUV stopped following, turning back toward town. My gut told me it wasn't just a coincidence. Later that day, Lisa came over with cookies, her kids right behind her. "I heard about the note," she said, her voice full of worry. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine, Lisa, but I need you to stay alert. Veronica won't stop until she gets what she wants." Lisa looked around nervously. "A few neighbors saw strange cars driving around last night. People are scared, Alex." "They should be," I said softly, but not for long. That night, I put up new cameras around the property and stayed awake with the lights off, watching the live video on my laptop. Around midnight, I saw movement on the screen. 3 people were creeping through the trees, moving toward the cabin. My heart beat fast as I zoomed in. One of them was holding a crowbar. Another had a gas can. The third, I knew her right away. It was Veronica. Even in the grainy night vision, I knew it was her. They thought they were being sneaky. They thought I was asleep. I grabbed my phone and called the sheriff, whispering, "They're here now." While I waited for help, I stayed hidden in the shadows, my heart pounding, but my hands steady on the baseball bat I was holding. The people reached the porch, whispering to each other. "Pour it," Veronica said quietly. "We'll burn this place down and finish what we started." The sound of liquid splashing onto the wood filled my ears, my chest tightening with rage. Just as Veronica lit a match, the sheriff's siren screamed through the night, blinding lights cutting through the trees. The people froze like deer caught in headlights. Officers rushed onto the property, guns out, ordering them to the ground. Veronica dropped the match, screaming, "You can't do this. He's the bad guy, not me." The officers put handcuffs on her hands behind her back as she kicked and shouted, "This isn't over. I'll get out. I'll take everything from you, Alex." I stepped out from the shadows, the bat still in my hand. "You already lost, Veronica. The lake, the lot, the power. You lost all of it. Now you've lost your freedom, too." She spit on the ground, looking at me with hate as the officers dragged her away. The other two people, shaking, were put into the police car with her. The smell of gasoline was in the air, mixing with the cold night wind. After the cars disappeared down the road, the sheriff walked over to me. "She won't be getting out this time. Trying to set a fire, breaking and entering, not following her bail rules. She's going away for a long time." I let out a deep breath, the tension finally leaving me. "Thank you, Sheriff. This time, I believe it's really over." Days later, the trial ended with both Veronica and Mark getting long prison sentences for setting a fire, trying to kill me, and many other crimes. The courtroom cheered when the decision was read. The lake community was finally free. Months passed, and the county turned the burned parking lot into a beautiful public park. Kids played on swings, families had picnics, and the lake was alive with laughter again. The fence around my cabin stood strong, not as a wall, but as a symbol of strength. One evening, as the sun made the lake gold, Lisa walked up to my porch. "Alex, you did it. You gave us our home back." I smiled, drinking my coffee. Sometimes you have to fight to protect what's right, but it's worth it. The lake shone under the setting sun, calm and peaceful. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of months of battles finally lift off my shoulders. Veronica and Mark were gone. The HOA was gone, and I was finally free. The story of the quiet man who stood up to a whole group of bullies spread far beyond the town, inspiring others to stand up for what was right. And as for me, I finally slept soundly, knowing that no one would ever try to take what was mine again. Sometimes, the quietest person holds the biggest power, and when pushed too far, they rise stronger than anyone expects.